Good evening and welcome to the Bryan Board of Public Affairs Board meeting for December 1st, 2015. First thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the November 17th, 2015 meeting. Everyone had a chance to
I
look
see
those
nothing
over?
wrong with them.
I-
Approve.
I had a question on the back side, top of it. Second line, right after the date, November 17th, it says taking him for,
Okay.
if you want to,
Correct that.
that's all I see other than that. I second the motion to approve then.
Al,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Dick.
Yes.
Number 2, a hearing of public concerns. Hearing none, we'll move on. Number 3, a resolution to renew the Convergence care contract with Black Box.
This will be resolution number 35, a resolution authorizing the Bryan Director of Utilities to renew the Convergence Care contract with Black Box Network Services / Logos Communication, Inc. for internet service operations, maintenance, and consulting services. This is a yearly service contract we have with Black Box. Joe actively negotiated this contract quite heavily this last year. He's also pulling a lot of the work that we used to hire them to do in-house, so that's where we garnered a lot of savings. As I noted in my summary to the board, Joe successfully, with bringing some stuff back home, saved about $48,000 on this coming year's contract versus last year's contract. So this year's contract fee will be $7,583.84, payable over the 12-month period, so it's every month we pay that. So, as I said, this is for support for the routers, the voice applications, which are our phone systems, security appliances, IP services, device storage. I mean, just a whole gamut of things. So, if you have questions, I will direct them towards Joe because I know this is his wheelhouse.
But this is quite a bit less than what it was last year.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, nice job.
Yeah, but the service is
Yeah.
the equal of what we had before.
Yeah, we typically pay
Just-
$139,000 a year. Yeah. You're down to $91,000 a year. So, I mean, big time savings. But
Minor
again,
drop.
bringing a lot of it back in-house. So
Okay.
with our staff that we have right now,
Doing it
Ken
here
and Cody,
in-house.
those guys, we're gonna start taking a lot of the stuff over on our own.
Correct.
And what we do, to continue to have that support beyond that, we will buy certain support hours that we use as we need. So we have control of that. It's not a fixed cost every month.
I
So-
saw that in there and I did wonder if those rates were in the previous contracts?
Mhm.
And if so, have they changed any?
No,
The daytime rates, the evening rates, the weekend,
no, they're basically the same, Karen.
are they? Okay. That's good. Very good job, Joe.
Yeah, good job. Give you more money for your budget.
Entertain a motion then?
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Second?
Jim,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
Number 4 is a review of the 2016 budget.
Okay, so this will take a majority of this meeting's time. And it's just, we're gonna go through just sort of the budget itself that will be presented. It was presented to council's budget committee. This council approves our budget here at the utility. It will then go for you folks to listen to. And then we will take it for council's approval December 21.
Yes.
December 21, so right off the bat, let me go to this page here. I'll tell which page we're gonna look at first. It's your budget summary for all the departments. A couple things I wanna point out. Electric department's total proposed budget has went down $2.3 million versus the 2015 calendar year. A lot of those decreases are for the fact we're not, working on turbines and doing some other things. We're trying to get a handle on the dollars and get that in place. You will see the clerk treasurer side of that. There's an increase of about $216,000. Realize that is an AMI payment for that because they make the payment in behalf of the electric department. So that's why you see theirs jump up the most. Water department, overall decrease in spending from last year's budget, the 2015 to 2016 of $163,000. Again, you'll see the larger number there in the clerk treasurer of $166,000. That is a payment for the AMI. So, it's built in all portions of that. And then we drop into the communication fund. They see a decrease as well of $42,000 in the proposed budget spending versus the 2015 year. And that $50,000, the major decrease in the clerk treasurer side is the smaller amount of loan payment to the electric department. You know, before we were paying $350,000, built into the budget this year is around $295,000, so that's reflective in there. You see that number there. So overall, utility
Well,
budget,
we are still paying off the payment.
you are still
of
paying that
$295,
payment off. Yep,
Correct?
$295 and some change. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 295.
Yep.
The zero then.
It will be zero at the end of 2016.
Okay.
Okay. So projected utility budget from 2015 was 29.9 million. Our 2016 is 27.4 million, or a 2.5 million decrease. Okay. Sounds great, but I also want to point out fund balances. You know, we are decreasing because we are seeing our fund balances move south as well. Estimated electric department fund balance at the end of this calendar year will be $8.2 million. With the budget that I'm going to present to you, projected estimated 2016 December 31st fund balance should be about 6.8. Okay, so that tells you right off the bat you have about a $1.3 million deficit spending going to happen. Estimated water fund balance at the end of this year, 2015, should be about 1.6 million, and at the end of 2016, which, you know, projecting out another full year, 1.2, or about 470,000 deficit spending. We did just pass the water rate increase, so that will help cushion that, and we built that into this next budget. Not heavily, we're just starting to bring it in, okay? Communication department fund balance, at the end of this calendar year, December 31st, we anticipate it to be about 1.4 million. And at the end of 2016, December 31st, we would anticipate 1.089 million, or $347,000 deficit spending, okay? And those of you that have been around the budget, you know that communication floats right there, pretty consistent, okay? We don't seem to get ahead, but we don't seem to drop too much below that, so we're holding our own at the time, okay? So that's just a quick summary of the departments. Now we'll go through, what I want to hit next would be just the Word document of the budget summary. And these are mostly capital projects or things that just are, you know, those highlights of what we see going on. So the 2015 income estimate came in about $365,000 lower than what I anticipated. I'm going to tell you that's probably, what I'm seeing is lower commercial industrial energy needs, as well as a seasonally cool or warm winter and cool summers. Just the opposite of what we want to see when it comes to revenue streams. We want extremely cold and we want hot. Well, we haven't had that, and it's reflective. So taking those variances into the next year's budget, and we're starting to see this already, we reduced the 2016 revenue stream down to reflect that. So overall, that does affect the whole budget in the sense because we're cash-based accounting. Power plant capital expenses, the biggest ones that I think we want to make note of. We have a truck 6 replacement. We want to replace that with a F450. Right now you have a Dodge 3500 V10 gas motor, over 100,000 miles. It's got transmission problems. There's a lot going on with that truck that it's not worth the dollars to get it fixed. We are asking more out of that vehicle because we're really gearing up, doing a lot of the work at the power plant as well as the power dam. That truck is hauling material, so we need to go to a beefier truck to do that. The electric study target mitigation, I'm going to call that out. That's a larger ticket item. You know, we had the electric system study done, so it's a 10-year study. That is finalized. We're getting a finalization on that this month. Knowing that, we're going to have things that they're going to call out right away that are immediate need repairs. But I can't tell you exactly what those are going to be. And we know they're going to be capital repairs. You're going to be updating or replacing completely certain pieces of equipment within our system. This is just the top of that iceberg. We need to get going on it, but I don't know exactly what piece of equipment we're going to tackle first, so I have to call it out as it is. It's just part of this mitigation plan, okay? But that's where those dollars are heading to. The all-glaze hydroelectric capital, the big one we want to talk about or show you right off the bat is that generator 3 runner shaft, the runner and shaft replacement, repair. It's more of a replacement. We're going to have it completely refabricated. That was scheduled for 2015, but remember, with those expenses or those cost overruns, when we got into that GT2 unit, we transferred that money over and used this year's budget dollars to dive into the GT2. We still have this unit down. It hasn't been able to generate power for us for about 6-8 months. That is our front line. We're gonna get on it this next year because we need to. So that's the one in the power plant, augerlays that needs to be brought out. Electric distribution, overall, we just reduced the scope of projects for those guys. We reduced their total capital spending by over $100,000. The big noted ones I want to call out, the East Village primary and secondary upgrade. That's phase B of the phase A project this year. That's brand new cable, brand new conduit, transformers, box pads. It's a complete rebuild of the system that's 35 plus years old. Excuse me. The farm store primary transformer service upgrade, that is just east of town here. That whole infrastructure behind there is going to get, I don't even want to call it replaced. It's going to be brand new. New feed in, new concrete pad, new transformers, new everything. It's not going to be replaced as it stands. It's going to be a whole new separate system. So that's why it's in the capital side. The other things that are in that, the transformers, those are ongoing every year capital needs that are just continued on through. The Greenfield primary extension, I did have a board member ask me about that. That is a development south of town. That is a cost share development, which means this particular development now is in the A to construction phase. We still have to buy the materials, so that's what's going to cover that. Electric communications, capital, nothing really to speak of for the 2016 year. Again, Joe is doing more with less when it comes to that part of his department. Electric office, there is a need to replace the travel vehicle. Those of you board members who used our travel vehicle to go out of town understand what I'm talking about. The Crown Victoria we have is shot. The Ford Escape Hybrid, we did replace the batteries a year or two ago, but it's really not a vehicle that I would trust going long distance out of town anymore. There's always a point in time where the mileage on our vehicles gets to be such that they end up being more usable in town than out of town. Safety reasons and just all kinds of other things.
I guess that's the vehicle we took, right?
That's
We found out.
yeah.
That is the vehicle
we
you
did.
took that I heard about, yes.
We didn't know we were getting it there.
Yeah, so
Bonnie drove.
so that one, we will be looking at replacing the vehicle as a travel vehicle. It will be either an SUV or some kind of economy car. I need something that's safe, but I also have to consider the winters we've been having. I have to have something that's safe for people to travel out in a winter type vehicle. That's why I'm looking at an SUV or something that has a safety
Will
feature
that be
like
through
that.
the state?
We will definitely go through the state if we can. We will always offer it to our local, like Chip and those guys here in town. However, we still have to do what's right for the community, spend those dollars the right way.
Sure.
So I never want to commit one direction or the other. With that being stated, there is a need for the Ford Escape to be transferred down to the clerk treasurer's office because they do short runs in town here, and the vehicle that they do have that we help take care of is worse than anything we have right now. So it really needs to go goodbye. So this is a nice transition.
17 years old.
The electric clerk treasurer, there's some that I called out, a replacement bridge at the fire training center. I worked with Bryan Whelan and Mr. Siders, the fire chief. That bridge that crosses the creek there is in very bad shape. And it's really kind of like the last year safety-wise. We, as a utility, utilize that bridge to get to the JV4 line on the electric side. That's why you see the $20,000 there. And you'll see it in the water department budget as well, but at a higher value. So we are getting more from the water department because they utilize it more than the electric. They will take material, dirt and whatnot back to the city dump. So because we are part of the problem with the bridge deteriorating because we use it, we should be part of the repair as well. So that's why you're seeing that. Overall, power plant expenditures, the big one, Ant Power Supply is being decreased from $14 million to $13.5 million. That's not because we got this great price on power. It is because our usage is down, so our revenue stream is down, so has our expenditures of that been down. So we got to model both ways. Now, I did have a concern on this, and I did meet with AMP on a conference call, because inside this expense is our transmission fees. And those, as I've been preaching, are going to continue to go up. Transmission is billed from July 1 to July 1. So really, I'm only capturing half the year of what transmission increases we would potentially see. So I'm comfortable reducing that by about $500,000 because we're really going to tackle that next part in 2017's budget because we'll have a better feel for where the transition prices are at. Electric distribution expenditure lines, the biggest ones I want to call out right off the bat. Marcus Corridor Maintenance, that's a new line item that was added to the distribution side. You have a line that's over 30 some years old plus. that now needs to have its own operational line that's being taken care of every year, that there's dollars allocated to make sure that line stays up and running and doing its job. AMI reading services, realize you have the capital goods of the meter, and there's a service fee where we have to pay to have those meters read and brought home. And behind that, you also get all the GUI interfaces. So it's not just they read a meter, you're gonna have access, and your customers will have access to web portals, billing portals, all kinds of other things that are built into the system, okay? So overall, reconciliation, we were showing about a $21 million revenue stream with total expenditures of 22.3, which is 1.377 deficit spending, okay? Again, as I said in the past, and this is one of the years I eat crow on a little bit, we do not spend everything in the budget. You know, just because there's money in the budget doesn't give the department heads the opportunity to just run and spend it. That's not what we're about. We typically see a certain percentage come back to the general fund so that number floats a little bit. This year, because you had significant repairs on a turbine, at the same time we did some investing in our community, we did spend more than what I would want to say that we would do any other time. So we're seeing that. That's why your numbers are showing such a drop in the fund balances, okay? So I'm pretty confident though that if we spend the way we are and we monitor the budget the way we do, and we reduce our expenses down, which we have, and our capital projects down, we will see around 6.85 or more. My goal is to be around $7 million by the end of 2016. I am going to throw this out to you. We do have plans to do a cost of service study in the electric department. Part of that cost of service is also a study for cash reserve policy. You know, we need to know what our costs are and what kind of cash we need to have in the bank. So these are going to go hand in hand. So 6.8 million is what we've operated before in the past. We just got a little heavy the last couple of years, which really protected us on the expenses we had this summer, which is a good thing. But we really need to know where that number should be at. You know, maybe it does need to be at 9 million, and maybe we need to start structuring ourselves so we have a $9 million fund balance. I don't know yet. We have to go through the process to figure that out, okay? Jumping into the water department. Water income will increase in 2016 because of the new water rate structure. That's a given. Overall, other revenue streams are expected to stay the same, and expenses are continue to their upward trend. You know, material prices keep going up. The equipment prices keep going up. There's no change in that. So the biggest one for distribution that I would want to call out is replacement of a case backhoe. The backhoe is in the 15-year-old range. It's their heaviest used piece of equipment. It has a leaking head gasket and rear differential seals. I did contact one of the vendors who we purchased through, which is part of the state program, to get, you know, I wanted an idea of, and Norm was working with me on this, hey, if we decided to repair this and not purchase new, what kind of dollars am I looking at? You know, there's a threshold here where it makes sense to buy new. Well, we're at $35,000 to almost $40,000 in repair costs, plus almost a month and a half to 2 months down. During that time frame, I still have to rent a hoe to use. There's an expense. So we're starting to get in that threshold where we're over 50% of the value. It doesn't make sense to repair. We're at that point now to replace and start to move on.
And you gotta depend on it working.
Amen.
And if it doesn't work, you gotta lease.
And realize these large expenses of equipment are built into the 15-year capital improvement plan. I mean, we have a plan that shows rotation of vehicles and what we need to do with our vehicles over a certain period of time. There are years where we push that farther, as in the fact of, okay, so we're due for a piece of equipment to be replaced this year. I asked Norm and his team to hold off another year, so we just keep moving it out. And that's when we start to evaluate, does it make sense to repair? Can we get another 2 or 3 years out of it? I'm trying to be very conscious of those dollars. Other than that, their capital projects is $65,000 for North Lewis and North Baker Street. Water line replacements are very reasonable. That's those guys doing some of the work. Again, shaft and bearing replacements completely in some of our wells, and then the other hydrants and meters are the same. Wages and benefits, nothing really to speak of. Water utility office, a $12,000 SUV, which is the same travel vehicle, it's their share. There's the clerk treasurer part of that, where the bridge is $30,000, that's their share of it. And again, you'll notice the water expenditure again for the water protection strategies. We're in phase 2 of the work we've done with Bennett and Williams. You know, now we got to start looking at the other protection plans and start building into it, and that's what those dollars are used for. Again, you have an AMI reading service fee, and then again the $125,000 for payments from the clerk treasurer's office. That's just anticipated what we'd have to pay. We still would have to secure a note and do some other things, but that's a payment right off the bat. Okay. So we expect 1.9 million in revenues, total expenses of 2.4, deficit spending of 473,000. It would leave our fund balance estimate at the end of 2016 about 1.2 million. Again, with the HO and the AMI and all the things we need to get done, and really being cognizant of our spending, just like we always are, I would venture to say we'll see ourselves a little tick higher than the 1.2. Okay, that's our goal. I mean, and I relay that to the department heads. They know how I feel about the budget, and they manage it the same way. I give them a lot of credit. Communications, if we can jump there real quick in the summary. 2015 estimated department revenues are coming into close to what we budgeted, which is pretty exciting. We got that one dialed in pretty well. The biggest thing that we really enacted was that rate increase driven by programming. Fortunately, we maintained our customer base. It hasn't gotten too far out of hand. Not sure, I'm confident that the future will be that way, but we're doing a lot of things to really beef ourselves up with service and whatnot, so we're gonna, hope we're there. Communication capital, the set-top boxes, the digital TV stuff, the transcaster video equipment, the fiber, and this Microtech locator, those all are pretty much normal purchases in that department. Realize our other departments run $300,000, $400,000 in capital expenses. Joe runs around 65, 70. I mean, there's a huge difference there. He does a lot more with less. Wages and benefits, we do not see anything new. The biggest increases we expect are programming costs. Those are always a struggle, and right now Joe's projecting them out for the next year, and we've never shied away from it. We've told you what we think we're going to be, and we're going to be there. So our estimated 2016 revenues are to be about 2.314 million, with expenses of 2.66 or a deficit spending of 347. I'm pretty confident if everything continues on our same path that we will still continue to maintain a $1 million plus fund balance in that department. Okay, so that's a quick summary just for reading purposes. With that, I will probably go through the actual budget fairly quick. I'm not going to go line by line. I'm going to call out the highlight points, the high points, and move on.
I still say we gotta have a good fund balance, because just like this past year, if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have paid for that deal down in Texas.
Yep.
And contrary to what people think, we've gotta have it. You can't reduce rates, you gotta maintain, and I don't know what that number is. I have no idea.
Honestly,
But you gotta have a fund. And
we will not know
remember the
until we
seminar we
study.
went to, he talked about having a good reserve.
Which we've had for many, many years. If you look over the past, there's,
But costs are
pretty
going
straight
up,
line.
so your reserve's gotta go up.
And that fund balance has a relationship with what is going on in the community, with the economics of the community, okay? So if economics in the community tail off, let's say you lose a company or two, our fund balance is gonna reflect that rather quickly. So you are building the ability, and realize the fund balance is set up there, so you have the ability to pay your bills, okay? Now, the big question before we get into this budget, what makes sense? What is paying your bills mean? No offense, we're a government entity. We don't react real fast. I'm gonna be honest. You have 2 board meetings a month. We can have special board meetings, but it takes time to react to things that are going on. So fund balance built on a 120-day to 190-day period of being able to pay your bills should give you sufficient time to react. But common sense tells you, if I carry that time frame for reactiveness, I have to carry a fund balance that allows me to do that. So the old days of $6 million or 6.5, where we feel really good about it and that's where we should be, that may only give you 45 days. That may give you the 90 days. Those are the things we're going to dive into a rate consultant and really get into the weeds and find out what that number has to be.
Yes, you got to.
Then we will build our budget and recommendations for rates and everything based on that, because we have to sustain ourselves. Our community requires it, okay? So I'll leave it there because the fund balance can get beat up all night.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so electric income source, already said, projected 18.5 million on the electric meters. Everything else, there's only a couple things I want to point out. If you had a chance to look at the budget, not many things changed. However, the renewable energy credits, those are being projected at 132,000. Where last year they're at 224. If you back into prior years, you're at 700,000, and years before that, you're at 1.5 million. That just tells you the rec market itself The renewable energy credits, be it solar, wind, or hydro, have fallen on their face. Okay, there's a lot of people in the market selling those. When we were making the most money was when we were the leaders of it, and there wasn't many wrecks out there. Okay, so that's why that number is being projected down, and that number is based on contracts we currently have. We are selling forward contracts to secure the best price, but those prices are still falling off. Okay. The other thing that I'm going to note out is your 18-16A. That's your final payment from the communication department on that loan that the electric department gave them. That's $295. You can see that. Realize that is still a revenue stream for electric department. After it's paid off, that revenue stream's gone. So there's no more $295s coming home, which is good for
Plus
the
interest.
plus interest, which is good for the communication department. But again, you're talking $250,000 less revenue in the electric department. Okay, so we got to think that way. So overall, the 2015 submitted was 21.65 million. That's the revenues we anticipated for 2015. We anticipate 2016 revenues to be 21, pretty much even, or a difference of $630,000. Okay, so again, $500,000 is a lot, and a lot of that is garnered from I reduced what we thought we were going to get for electrical expense coming our billing, as well as our incoming revenues on that. Okay, so overall, as I told you, we have a deficit spending of 1.37 million. Fund balance at the end of 2015 estimated at 8.2, and in 2016 should be 6.8. I'm hoping it's above that. We're going to manage it to be over 7 if we can. Again, that's if nothing goes wrong and we do our job the way we're supposed to. The capital improvements, which is the next page, I've already went through most of those. If there's any questions on those, I hit those in the verbal summary. We will jump the expenditure summary. Again, that's encompassing every department. I'm going to jump into the departments. We'll start with the electric department, which is your 18As. As it pertains to wages and bennies, no significant changes. They almost reflect the year prior. In fact, there's a little reduction in this year. If you go to the next page, and again, I'm going to go pretty quick through this, okay, unless you want me to slow down. Expenditures, remodeled the amps, utilities amp, which is your amp bill for the year here at the city, down to 13.5. Gas generation, I want to call that one out to you. If you look at 20, and that is 12C, 18A 12C, okay. 2015 calendar year was 425,000, and next year I did 155. Realize the difference is we were going to get into a firm gas contract, and we were set up to get into it. The gas company then called and said they didn't have the parts in, so they couldn't execute that contract. So we were into what they call an interruptible load contract, which helped us because it's a fixed cost every month to be in a firm contract. Now, I'm not happy with the firm contract cost, so I'm not sure I want to jump in it now. Let's go interruptible and see what we have happen. Is it gambling? No. I don't know if I want to put at risk $300,000 for something I may not be able to use right off the bat. I want to see where we end up with this. So that's why we're at 125,000 there. Professional services has went from 100,000 down to 60,000. And again, the 100,000 is 2015 numbers I'm using. Cost us, we had that study done on the system. That was a large study. We're not going to do that next year. Cost of service study is not that much, $20,000 plus. That's why that's reduced. So overall, power plant expenditures in 2015 were 18.2, and estimated 2016 are 15.93, or 2.3 million reduction. And again, I already mentioned that in the summary. Distribution wages, electric distribution wages are very much identical to the year before. No changes that I would anticipate there. If I go into the expenses, again, I'm just going to hit highlighted areas only. 18B15 professional services, again, they are sharing the cost of the system study. Not going to happen in 2015, so those numbers need to be brought back down. Marcus Corridor maintenance, that's the new operational line, 50 grand there. AMI reading services at 75,000. And if we drop down to 18B26, that is your capital outlay. Last year was 475, this year's 393. Sounds really good. However, realize we took some of the savings in capital, we had to build it back into operational. So we did reduce the spending, but this one is a sleight of hands and move over because of the Marcus Corridor line and the AMI reading. So understand that. I've had people go, well, that looks real pretty, but, well, you're right. It's still in the budget, just in a different place. Okay, so we'll jump into utility office. Really no changes to speak of in the wages and benefits, which would be your 18Cs. If you go to the expenditures under the 18Cs, again, reflective total expenses, 986,000 last year and 989 this year, a very small uptick, nothing to speak of. Clerk treasurer, wages and bennies, almost identical to the year before, so there's really no changes. If we go to the expenses, the two big items I want to point out, if you go to 18D26, there was money in there to do some ditch repair on the new industrial park, which didn't need to be done. So we reduced that down to $20,000 just to have some ancillary dollars there if we needed to repair something, okay? And then the meter replacement project, that is the $350,000 that the electric department, Lori would be paying to whatever, be it AMP or a loan or whatever for the AMI. So overall, those are the two major expense differences. We'll jump into the maintenance building, Kevin Vollmer's area. Basically, it's an identical wages and benefits package from the year before. No changes there. And again, Kevin does a really nice job of managing his expenses. And in fact, there's a little reduction of a couple $1,000s from 118,000 to 116 overall in that. So really nothing new to report. All glaze, wages and bennies, about the same. A little uptick when it comes to the temporary employees and the regular employees when it comes to their hourly wages. It doesn't mean they get a lot more money. It means we're actually accounting for more of their hours at Oglaze versus a power plant, and we know the split now. Before we had a one-man crew or a two-man that was bouncing down there. Now we know 3 days a week at this many hours equals this much money, so they're really starting to share the cost. Okay, so that's the difference. Other than that, there's really nothing new. The biggest expense, and you'll see it in the capital outlay for the Oglaze, is the 365. That's the generator repair in the vehicle. Okay, because the vehicle that needs to be bought down there. Other than that, that budget, the expenses have stayed pretty much the same. Board of Public Affairs, really nothing new on this one. The wages are the same, the bennies are the same, and all the miscellaneous expenditures are pretty much spot on the same. Okay. Communication side, realize Joe has an electric communication part of the budget. Wages and bennies are down a little bit. One time we were going to look at, when we paid this loan off, having a part-time employee come in. Right now, we think it's best not to for this next calendar year, to sort of go with the flow and see what we have. So we reflected that and then reduced it, wages and bennies. And then again, Joe's expenditures, we have a continued reduction in expenses. Last year, at 2015, as approved, was $385,000 worth of expenses. This year is $282,000. And that's a combination of supplies and materials and other things that we're shaving and getting back in line. So that's the electric actual budget itself that will be submitted to council. Any questions on that? I realize there's a lot of information here. And hopefully I gave everybody plenty of time to go through it.
I think you went through it pretty thoroughly too.
Okay, we'll jump into the water department. So anticipated, if we're ready to go, I'll make sure everybody's on the same page. Anticipated water charges are $1.863 million versus 1.7 the year before. So total revenue streams at the very end for the department are 1.931, which I already mentioned earlier in the night. We go to the next page. So our income is 1.931. Our expenses are 2.4 with a deficit of 473. Again, estimated department fund balance at the end of 2015 is 1.69 million. Projected by the end of 2016, 1.2.
I gotta ask you a question.
Sure.
It's not, the farm crash crop, I thought that was so much per acre we're getting, why wouldn't it be the same?
Because we actually, and if you notice on that, let me back up. I'm really conservative on the farm cash crop. We actually sell the alfalfa on that field. And this is out by the solar.
So we're not on a,
We do not lease that property out for
Okay.
someone to use.
I thought,
We actually,
well, the reading indicates,
yeah. So what we do is we go out and we sell it to the mill, or we take 3 quotes from, or 3 bids from 3 farmers that want that particular crop. The problem is, and I'm gonna tell you it's a problem, alfalfa seems to be a very plentiful crop at the moment. So sometimes it's easier for us to say, okay, we'll sign a deal with the mill that says you come in, you mow it, you take it, and we don't have to worry about it, you cut us a check, and we get so much per ton. Now, if you look at the estimated revenue streams versus the actual revenue account line that Lori sends us, we make more than what I budget for. I'm very conservative on that. We have a bad year or a dry year, I'm probably gonna hit what this budget shows. We have a stellar year where it's wet, we're gonna look really great because we sold a bunch of alfalfa, okay? It is.
I was under
it's-
the wrong impression, I thought it was like per acreage.
No. And it's such a small part of the budget, real tiny
Oh,
part.
yeah, I know.
It's just, it's a little bit of
I
sprinkle
had
on the
plenty of time to
frosting.
read the budget. That's it.
Okay, so we'll jump into the capital side. I've already covered the Case Backhoe. I've also talked about North Lewis, North Baker project. I talked about the travel vehicle and the bridge. So that's where the number, the $352,000 comes from. We jump into the total expenditure summaries. I'm not gonna go through all those lines because we're gonna hit each department, each part of that department as we go through it. So we go water distribution, water treatment, wages and bennies. Not much of a change there, just a slight uptick when it comes to wages and benefits. And then when we get into the total, we're talking really nothing new, about $20,000 difference. So you're talking 350,000, 20 grand's not that much. I mean, it's just a little bump up. We typically would see that, and I'm gonna say we're gonna use probably more summertime help than what we have in the past because we've been getting a lot of work out of them. We've had some really good kids. So, water treatment and distribution expenditures. The big ones I want to throw out to you, water protection strategies. Last year we appropriated $125,000. This year it's only $55,000 because we're now going into phase 2 of the study. And capital outlay, we went from $588,000 to $310,000 or $278,000 reduction. Overall, everybody's budget, be it water, electric, and communication, everybody was charged to less is more. So when they finally submitted to me what they felt they were happy with, I got to go through with the hack and slash and negotiations began on what we were gonna do and not do, okay? I give the guys credit because our department heads are very, very in tune with their budget. Water utility office wages and bennies, nothing new to really report. Those numbers are coming in almost identical to the year before. We will go water utility office expenditures. Couple of things I did want to point out. Vehicle maintenance is a new line we added just to cover the cost and actually start to see what those vehicles are costing to repair when we have them repaired. And then again, the capital outlay at $12,000 versus the $5,000. That's your uptick in the travel vehicle and some other those capital projects is reflected there. Clerk treasurer wages and bennies on the water side, nothing new to report, almost identical from the year before. Then we get into the other expenditures of the clerk treasurer's office and the ones that I would call out. We have a slight uptick in professional services. There are some engineering services we need to work with Lori on downtown, as well as the capital outlay is bridge and AMI project. And if you look at the AMI loan payment of $125, you'll see the difference of the last year submitted of $134 to this year of $300,000. You take the $125 loan payment to the AMI and you take the $30,000 as it pertains to the bridge replacement, and there's your difference. So it's very, very open, you can see it. Questions? Water's a lot smaller than electric. Okay? Finally, the last one. Communication department. So we submitted a revenue stream of about $1.4 million last year, and we anticipate that same revenue stream this year. Joe and his staff have done a wonderful job of retaining as many employees as we can to keep that number fairly close, and I'm pretty confident we're going to hit that. The other revenue upticks that I would expect to see is pretty much, they're all the same. So we look at the 2015 submitted of 2.3, your 16 is 2.3. So very consistent. Joe's been very consistent with his budget and what he does. So operational income of $2.3 million. I realize it's 2.314 and some change. I'm just going to round it up 2.3. Total expenses of 2.6 or a $347,000 deficit spending. Realize of that 347, Mr. Horn, 295 is loan payment.
Yep,
Just throwing it out there because he's done a good job to make
I
sure
called
he can
it,
make that.
but
Yep, I know, that's why I'm throwing it out there. So we would estimate the 2015 end of this year's budget to the fund balance to see about 1.4 million. And then projected communication, again, realize we're projecting out another calendar year, the end of 2016 about 1.08. And I understand projecting out a full calendar year sometimes doesn't make sense, but we really need to shoot out there and look at what we think that money is going to be based on our expenses and our current revenues and our current bank account. We need that part of it. So I'm really happy when I miss it to the good, where I project a certain number and it comes in way over. I'm okay with that. Communication department capital improvements, again, very similar to the year before. Realize again, we're talking other departments that have capital expenditures of $400,000 plus. Joe's at $59,000. He does what he needs to do with the dollars he has available. So we are I want to make sure our community understands how frugal he is and how well he manages this budget.
And we deferred the building, right?
We deferred the building. Yep. You can't do the building right now. We have to get a feel for where we're at. We need the building,
Correct.
but we can't do it yet. So the communication department expenditure summary, again, I'm going to go through that as we flip through. Again, the total 2.661, you can see where this comes from each department. Wages and benefits, really nothing new from the prior year as it pertains to those. You still have the same number of employees doing the same thing, taking care of the same people. Their wages are pretty much where they are. Those bennies are there. We're not looking at increasing employee staffing there, so you're not going to see those uptick. And I'm telling you right now, when I say less is more, we're running the whole system with, I'm going to say 2 employees because our IT staff is doing the IT work. In fact, I have a video production guy that helps on call to give them relief when they're on call. So very much, these guys are doing a lot with less. Okay, I know I beat the heck out of that. Communication department, other expenditures. Notice programming is the same as the year before. We had built enough cushion. We took a shot at the 1.15 million programming cost, thinking we were going to see about a 6%. Well, realized that actually came in about 4%, but they sort of rear-loaded it. So they didn't hit us hard last year, but it's coming to us now. So we left the 1.15 thinking we're going to be in the same area. Franchise fees, which is what we pay the city to be able to use the streets and stuff, that is mandated by the state of Ohio. So before anybody says, well, that ain't right, it's mandated. We don't have a choice. That stayed the same. Personally, I'd be happy if that one would go up because that means we're carrying more customers. So there's a give and take there. Local productions, that did go up. Local productions, Mr. Horn, is our ad sales. That's every year we budget around $20,000. In 2015, that was $20,000. We end up doing a line item transfer because our ad sales, that team does a great job selling those ads, even though that's not our
Yeah, our
business.
income, I see, is 46,000.
Yep.
That's better we've had.
Yep, so we have to, instead of doing a transfer, we build it a little higher to cover that cost, and again, if it doesn't get used, it gets rolled back into the fund balance, okay? Equipment, new equipment purchase, uptick $30,000. That's just how we capitalize things now. Anything over $5,000 is considered capital. We have a bunch of little minor purchases in there. Lori and I talked, and she's like, just show it in there because you're buying small things, and you're not gonna capitalize them. The other one, fiber coax use, that is the lease that's still left. That's still at $14,000 for 2016. That's going to tick up in 2017. So the loan's paid off. That's a loan, that's different. The lease is what the communication pays the electric department to lease the physical assets of the system. Okay, that will get bumped back up next year. Not to the $100-some thousand range, to a range that's manageable. That makes sense, that's defendable, okay? So overall expenditures from 2015 were 2.54 and our expenditures for 2016 are 2.62, less than $8,000 difference. I think that's pretty impressive when it comes to that kind of budget with Joe there. Wages and benefits, court treasurer, again, nothing really new to speak of. Those the wages and bennies are falling within a couple $100 they were last year. And then we get into the communication department expenditures. Again, the one I want to show is the electric loan principal payment of $295. That's the biggest portion of that part of the expenses. Again, next year, after next year, that will be reflected as 0. So And our goal is, by the second meeting of January, to have permission resolution to make that payment. Get it done, get it out of the way, get it out of our hair. Go from there. Overall,
I had quite a time to study the budget this year. I think it's a good budget. I really do. Well prepared. I've
there's
got
a
to
lot
give
of,
everybody credit.
help with the budget. You know, the original draft is sent off to the department heads. We trend all year. I bother Lori all year, trust me, I know I do. Keep my thumb on this thing for 10 months. The only time I get reprieve is this time of year when it's done. I can go, I'm good until February, March, which is still way too early. But I actually believe today our department heads and supervisors are more in tune with their budget than they ever have been. And it truly is a negotiation. I have a number that I sit at and I call Lori and say, here's what we're gonna fall at and this is what I wanna see. And then I throw that to the department head and say, you cut your budget to the point where you can get me that number. And then if you don't, I'm gonna tell you we're gonna cut. And it's easier for them than me because they never like what I wanna cut. But they do a great job. So, any other questions? I realize that's a long, lengthy, how do you do?
But I appreciate you wanting to defend that fund balance. And I think you're right, that study, we need to know where we're supposed to be. Are we there, or are we way far away? Good idea.
So off the top of my head, well, it's not off the top of my head, but we built a model that reflects cash reserves. Again, it's a model based on some good principles by some rate consultants. In fact, I supplied it to one of our rate consultants and that person was like, wow, we like this, can we use this too? And we built that in with a 2% base, which means we're covering 2% of our base costs and some other things, and I built it at about 120 days out, okay? I'm gonna tell you right now, I know $9 million is about right where you're supposed to be. So when the, and I don't wanna say the community, when the group was upset, that our community at large was upset that we were carrying that $10 million, $11 million fund balance, we were not too far from where we were supposed to be. Now realize the days of the $6.5, $7 million fund balances, you know, today costs of things have went up. And those days, you know, back in the mid 90s to early 2000s, that was probably sufficient. But it's very similar to what we encountered with our water study, realizing, wow, we haven't kept up with what we're supposed to. Again, you want to make sure you can take care of business.
Oh, yeah.
You
Well,
don't
who
wanna
can
fall on your
predict,
face.
who can predict equipment failure?
Oh, goodness gracious, yeah, bad weather. So, any other questions? Again, I'll take any questions you have. Again, it goes to the 21st, it goes to council. With council's approval, this will be what the 2016 budget for the utility looks like.
Good job.
When do we approve that? When,
There, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, because that could be, there is actually no official approval by board on a budget. It is council driven only.
okay,
Okay, and that's called out in your charter.
okay,
So
that's why they control us.
that's why we work together like we do.
All right.
Number 5, to set the final meeting for 2015.
So in the past, we did December 31st in my office at noon. I would still like to do that because what that does, it allows us to get the bills paid, everything finalized by the end of the year. Now I realize it's also a tough time because I have board members who do go out of town for family things. I need at least 3 of you folks here to have a quorum, and we really need to have that meeting.
I'll be here.
Okay,
All I need is a kid,
31st.
The
a
31st.
driver.
I will be here.
okay.
What time did you say?
I would prefer the 31st at noon in my office, but I also would ask that you guys, I think I have to make a motion on that, is that correct? A motion
So
to make
moved.
that happen.
Second.
Al,
Yes,
Karen,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Dick.
Yes.
Number 6, effect semi-monthly disbursements.
I'll move.
Second?
Al,
Yes,
Dick,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Number 7, comments from BPA and staff. Director?
I think I've had a lot of comments tonight. The only one I want to throw out there, don't forget this spring we had the legislative rally in DC. Again, I would encourage 2 board members to go. I can't take more than 2 because it gets into some quorum and some other things. but a person really should get involved with that because we are really, our business is electrically driven that side. And you really need to have those connections as board members. So, again, if you are interested, I think Sylvia sent you some paperwork originally. Contact her. If I have more than 2 that are interested, then we're gonna have to sit down and decide, you know, who's gonna get to go this year and who will go next year.
Bonnie, you went last year, correct?
I went the last 2 years. 2 years. Okay, Rhonda, any comments? No, ma'am. Laura?
No, ma'am.
Al?
Nothing.
Dick?
Nothing. That's good.
Karen?
No.
No, just I think we got a good budget. There are a couple things I questioned about the bridge replacement things. I was kind of curious how we got into that, but I guess I understand that now. It's something we need to take care of and help the city side out, maybe to get that taken care of. But no, other than that, that's it.
All right, well, then we will take a brief recess and go into executive session to discuss compensation of public employees.
Max, there will be no action coming out of it. And in that exec session, I would like Mr. Sproul, good lord, when you get up there, I won't remember your name. And I'm gonna ask Rhonda and Lori to step out of that one. Thank you, guys.